But I think one of the things that I would do if I ever achieved a dictatorial power in this country, it would be to suggest that if you have any type of television program, you really aren't allowed to have political guests on and allow them to say things about politics unless you're going to critically think about them. Right? It's one thing to say like, oh, we're going to have, we're going to have Newt Gingrich on to find out what makes this guy tick. I don't know that I would watch that. I already know the answer. He's running a grift. But that's much better than allowing him to actually run the grift. Stephen Colbert had on last night Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse, who is, a bit of a poser, I think is the way to put it, right? I mean, he's sort of... and look, if you want to have Ben Sasse on and ask him, I don't particularly like it when people are, politicians are humanized that much. But I understand. Okay, fine. Some people I say should not be humanized. Like Dick Cheney. You should not humanize him in any way. I don't even care if it's like a depiction of him as a bad human. I think you should not humanize him. But when Ben Sasse gets on and starts espousing political ideology and you leave it unquestioned, and it's annoying and it's detrimental long term. Here's Ben Sasse on Stephen Colbert Show.
How would we find out if she did that?
We should know all that we can know.
Pause it for 1 second. This is Ben Sasse giving a very specific answer on Ivanka Trump's emails. Now, do I think Ivanka Trump's emails are a big deal? No, we obviously have a problem with like the way that we organize this stuff. And, clearly it was big enough for essentially the entire establishment media to make a narrative of it and for the Republicans to do literally 6 investigations about Hillary Clinton. But leaving that aside, here's Ben Sasse, who refuses to take a position on it, but seemingly reasonable.
How would we find out if she did that?
We should know all that we can know.
Congressional investigation. Okay.
Yeah.
Seriously, really?
Well, I don't know the particulars of this story.
And
but
how would you find out the particulars of the story? Perhaps with a
So it turns out there are 3
congressional
branches of
investigation.
government.
Yeah.
They're supposed to check and balance one another. So
How
I
has
think
that been going the last 2 years, the check and the balance thing over there? Because it sounds like a lot of check. I think we lost the balance somewhere along the line.
The Congress doesn't work well.
It doesn't? Okay, here's the thing. Is that something, because that's something that we could agree on. The Congress doesn't seem to be working well. How long have you actually been in the Senate now?
Almost 4 years.
4 years. What do you think the problem is? Why doesn't the Congress function the way that I think the founders intended?
Yeah, so...
Pause it for 1 second. This is a very easy question for people to answer. Why has Congress not functioned the way that it's supposed to in terms, and they're talking check and balance, they're talking about oversight of the executive branch. Now, the answer is quite easy. It is because the Republican Party has controlled both of those branches. And the Republican Party has, over the past 20, 25 years, in addition to being ideologically problematic from my perspective, but functionally in terms of Congress, have been totally derelict. And they are a death cult. And death cults don't really care about good government and accountability. But let's see what Ben Sasse thinks.
Congress function the way that I think the founders intended.
Yeah, so I think in 230 years of U.S. history, the Congress is probably at its second weakest moment. The founders didn't have a vision of the world where people wanted to be in politics, move to D.C. and stay there forever. You're supposed to think the place where you're from is the most interesting place in the world. And We use the term historically public service because you go to Washington to serve for a time and you're supposed to go back home. Right now, most people in Washington, their biggest long-term thought is about their own incumbency. They don't want to ever leave that place, and so they don't want to do hard stuff. So there's not a lot of checking and balancing. There's a lot of more kind of parliamentary instinct to defer to people in your own party, and the founders would be confused by that.
Pause it. You know what? The founders would be confused by a lot of things. I mean, this is such a ridiculous argument. There isn't something fundamentally wrong with politicians who want to continue to work in government. The bigger problem is that people leave and then cash in, frankly, on their service. But the idea that the founders would be confused by this, you know what else they'd be confused by? How people actually get to Washington. They fly. Are you telling me they fly in big steel cans? What? Are you serious? What are all these black people doing too?
What is the point he's trying to make about public servants? Like, if you look at that, actually, we call them public servants because you weren't supposed to do it for that long. That doesn't follow at all.
No, you're supposed to go do public service. It's supposed to be something different from having a job. The founding fathers would be absolutely shocked. They'd be absolutely shocked too, frankly, that what are their slaves doing as in the Senate? What is this whole thing where you now popularly elect a senator? What? That's insane. We were supposed to keep some type of power for the landowners.
They wouldn't be that confused by gerrymandering.
No, they wouldn't be that confused by gerrymandering. And what, again, explain to me this thing where they're flying. We had anticipated the internet. We knew that would happen, but we thought everyone would Skype in. We didn't think they would have the ability to fly. That's absurd. I'm so confused. This is just ridiculous. And Ben Sasse, I'm sorry, can someone point to me that something that Ben Sasse has done that has been provided a check? I mean, this guy's so in touch with the essence of what the founders expected.
He's like Jeff Flake light, kind of. He's not going to go all the way, but he'll give you a little taste.
And I suppose Ben Sasse is going to wrap up his career in 2 years and head back to Nebraska. Is that what we're to believe? Ben Sasse is on his retirement lap right now. But it's annoying to me because right after this, all that Colbert does is move on to the next thing.
Ben Sasse's score here, we have the 538. This is actually fairly useful. The Trump score.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I would imagine it is quite low, right? Because he has been such a check.
Looks like he's pretty on board with how the balancing's been going.
Oh, really? What's he doing there? He's almost a 90%.
He's a B+ Trumper.
90%. In fact, he is not less than a point away from his predicted score, based upon how well Trump did. Like his whole thing of it's more parliamentary that people just subscribe to their own party. He has been there on just about everything, and the only thing he voted,
tariffs.
Yeah, tariffs and health care, which, of course, he was unbelievable.
Ben Sasse.
Yeah, so much for Ben Sasse.